"Run, Your Highness," shouted the page. "They're already here." The heavy folds of her velvet gown restricted her movements, and her heart raced so violently it felt like it might burst from her chest. But there was no time to hesitate. She gathered her strength and tried to run as fast as she could. The rebels had already infiltrated her palace, but she, the Queen of Naples, knew her domain better than anyone. That was how she managed to survive that fateful night. Bloody Joanna slipped away from retribution. Princess Joanna of the House of Anjou, Sicily, was born in March of 1336, becoming the fifth child of Prince Charles of Calabria and Marie of Valois. Alas, the noble couple lost their heirs one after another, so it was the little girl who was destined to inherit her father. By the age of 6, Joanna was completely orphaned, and she immediately became the first in line for the Neapolitan throne, right after King Robert, her grandfather. What a king he was! A splendid warrior, the most educated man of his time, and a generous patron of the arts. Petrarch and Boccaccio praised Robert, and he was not stingy in his support of writers. The Neapolitan court was considered the most enlightened and brilliant in Europe, and it was Joanna who was to become its center. At the age of 16, she received everything at once. The charming and intelligent girl queen had all the makings of a great ruler. Naturally, no one thought it possible for such a young sovereign to immediately govern a kingdom. She needed support. Thus, Joanna was betrothed to Prince Andrew of Hungary. The marriage was expected to take place shortly after her grandfather's funeral, after which she would share the burden of power with her husband. But Joanna remembered well the strength her grandfather wielded. She quickly realized that by becoming Prince Andrew's wife, she would be voluntarily ceding Naples to him, while she would fade into the background to bear children. This prospect did not appeal to her. Her aunts also played a role, unanimously insisting that the princess should wait. Everything might have worked out if it weren't for that cursed will. King Robert had given clear orders regarding his granddaughter. She was to marry, end of story. She had to comply. Yet no one was in a hurry to crown Prince Andrew. Thus, even after marrying Joanna, the Hungarian remained in the same status. It's easy to guess that the married life of the newlyweds did not go well. The prince demanded the crown, while Joanna evaded a direct answer. She tried to avoid her husband's gaze as much as possible, organizing endless celebrations and feasts. It was easier to get lost in the crowd of courtiers. The furious prince wrote angry letters to his relatives, accusing Joanna of infidelity and inappropriate behavior. And Joanna was indeed having fun. She savored the taste of power, feeling the intoxicating influence she had over the fates of others. Joanna spent her nights with another prince, Louis of Taranto, hardly bothering to hide this fact. The betrayed husband, unwilling to become a laughingstock, began gathering supporters. In Naples, he found like-minded allies. Many disapproved of the young queen's lifestyle. To bolster Andrew of Hungary's cause, his mother made a special trip to Naples. Bribes, terrible rumors about Joanna, and intimidation tactics were all employed. Even the Pope turned against the Neapolitan queen. The situation was becoming dire for Joanna. Pope Clement VI was prepared to personally place the crown that rightfully belonged to Andrew of Hungary upon his head, bypassing Joanna's wishes entirely. The prince's mother had already spent too much time in Naples and was eager to return home. Before leaving, she gifted her son a special ring, a family heirloom. It was believed that its wearer would not perish by sword or poison. Yet Andrew of Hungary met his end in a completely different manner. He was executed on the orders of Queen Joanna. The queen decided to resolve the matter decisively. After gaining her freedom, Joanna did nothing for several months. Unpleasant rumors circulated in Naples about the murder of Prince Andrew. His Hungarian relatives vowed revenge. Andrew's brother, King Lajos, sent Joanna insulting letters, to which she replied in kind. "Your deceased relative was an absolute barbarian and a country bumpkin, so an alliance with him was impossible." Soon after, Joanna married her lover, Prince Louis of Taranto. It is said that beneath Joanna's palace windows, cries of "death to the harlot" echoed for months, but this is likely an exaggeration. No one would have dared to confront such a formidable woman openly, except perhaps King Lehos. Gathering his forces, he marched on Naples, naturally seeking vengeance. The invasion of the city began in March of 1348. Joanna and Louis fled to southern France, but Lehos, having already captured Naples, suddenly turned back. He was deterred by an outbreak of the plague. A year later, he made another attempt, but Rome intervened. The Pope offered to mediate between Joanna and Lehos, a service that, as it turned out, was generously compensated by the Neapolitan queen. Thanks to Joanna's gifts, Pope Clement, who had been so unyielding before, did not hold Joanna guilty of her husband's murder. She was merely labeled an accomplice, with the caveat that the young woman had simply been led astray. Who hasn't made mistakes? Returning to Naples, Joanna indulged in pleasures with renewed vigor. She reveled in her victory, attracting the finest writers, painters, and architects to her court. Louis of Taranto, on the other hand, exhibited remarkable restraint, doing his best to rein in his wife's endless spending. But after his death, Joanna had no one to hold her back. The satiated widow began to worry. Time passed, and she had no heirs. Less than a year after the death of her second husband, she decided to marry once more, this time to the titular king of Majorca, James IX. They entered into a strict marriage contract. Their children would inherit Naples, but James would not attempt to claim the throne of the Sunlit Kingdom. However, James was largely preoccupied with his own affairs, which meant he rarely saw Queen Joanna and never fathered any children with her. The king of Majorca died from poison, leaving Joanna a widow once again, this time without an heir. Of course, she could have named a successor from her numerous relatives. And that's exactly what Joanna did. She chose Charles of Durazzo. However, due to a conflict with the new pope, who backed Charles, the Neapolitan queen changed her mind. She declared her future king and son to be Louis of Anjou, rather distant relative. The situation became even more complicated when Joanna entered her fourth marriage with Otto of Brunswick. This duke supported all of his wife's endeavors and took a strong stance against Charles of Durazzo. But they clearly underestimated the young man. He first defeated Otto's forces and then outmaneuvered Louis of Anjou. In a dramatic turn of events, Louis managed to capture Joanna herself. The Queen of Naples was starved in Sandfield, where her captors demanded the annulment of Louis's adoption. But Joanna was made of sterner stuff. Realizing her end was near, she chose to remain unyielding. She died in May of 1382. Charles of Durazzo ascended to the throne, only to have it immediately contested by Louis of Anjou. Yet neither of them managed to hold onto the crown of Naples. But that is a different story altogether. Subscribe to my channel for more captivating videos about history.